I'm going to share my screen and go through a little bit of a presentation about nature and resilience and what role nature might play in keeping us well, or, you know, harnessing the power of nature. So we'll roughly do, this is roughly how we're going to spend our time, just so you know. We've got this intro bit, which we're kind of, I think, moving out from. I'm going to talk a little bit about nature and health and why the two, how the two are connected. We're going to do a little bit of an experience, and we might get some feedback in breakout rooms, but you don't have to go into those breakout rooms if you don't want to. You can just stay in this main room. And then I'm going to hopefully end up with us all making our own nature-based intervention. So how are we going to bring a bit more nature into our lives? That's the plan. Let's see if we can stick to it. And just first things first, I suppose this is a confidential space. People might be talking about things which are quite private or personal. And I think that we welcome that. We welcome all difficulty, challenge, a whole variety of emotions that might come up. But obviously we keep that within these 4 Zoom walls. I probably don't need to say compassion. I think we're all compassionate people by the very nature we've turned up here. I imagine it attracts a certain kind of person. But yeah, just an allowing and not needing to fix necessarily, but an allowing of a gentle compassion towards each other. And I think I was floundering around thinking up for a third word beginning with C, so I put down a curated session. We will take care of the time and we'll move things on appropriately, okay? So we've done that kind of check-in with the weather. Thank you very much for playing ball. Oh yeah, by the way, I used to be a teacher, so I do kind of fling things out to the classroom quite often. And I love it when you're good students, and thank you for being good students so far and playing my game. So Catherine's already mentioned about the role of resilience and what these sessions are about. So I just wanted to make sure we did that. And I wanted also to mention something called the 5 Ways to Wellbeing, which are a really useful model, I find. It's a good reminder to myself of ways I can keep myself well. And they spell out the acronym CLANG, or they do in my head anyway. They're not quite in the right order in this pictogram, but you can see that connecting is the first one. C for CLANG, connecting. That means with other people, with oneself, connecting with how we're feeling, but also connecting to the wider world, or even, you know, the bigger power that we find ourselves surrounded by, connecting with nature very much. The reason I mention these 5 ways to wellbeing is that I think nature is a brilliant way of getting all these 5, and these have all been shown to be helpful in promoting well-being. So connecting, number 1, keep learning, because the L is the CLANG L is learning. Nature is full of mystery, full of the unknown, full of amazing things. So it gives a great opportunity for learning, whether that's the names of things or the foraging. Can you eat that? Can you not eat that? Beginning to understand how nature works. It's just inviting curiosity and questions. So I think it's a great avenue for learning. Being active, nature very often invites us to be out there, being active, walking, talking, swimming, and you almost do it without noticing. I certainly find it much easier to be active in nature rather than at the gym. I find the gym quite problematic. The N of CLANG is taking notice. So it's a real invitation towards mindfulness, towards a real appreciation of what's going on out there. The way that spring turns to summer, turns to autumn, noticing how the trees change, how the animals are behaving differently, what the weather's doing, etc., etc. And the last letter, G, is for giving. I think it's being grateful. I like to have the G for me stands for giving things, which does promote well-being in people, but also noticing gratitude, being grateful for the things that nature bestows on us. So all those things, I think, are really wonderful ways forward, and all of them you can get from nature. So, nature, why are we talking about it? Well, we are nature. We are from the natural world. It's how humans feel safest, actually. We know that when humans are surrounded by the color green, it does very, very powerful things to their blood pressure, to their stress hormone levels, to their feelings of well-being. And there are good reasons for that. Humankind evolved in the green. If an ancient human was surrounded by the color green, it meant there was plenty, there was food, there was shelter. It's a very positive stimulus for us to receive. So it's not surprising when we see the color green, we get that response. So it's a way of putting us into safe, calm, rest and digest and repair mode, not fight and flight mode. So I think, it's not surprising that we feel good in nature. Even the word, natural has this very cushioning, gentle, supportive, positive echo. If I hear something is natural, that feels like a good thing. A word of warning, of course, nature is red in tooth and claw, and I'm a very keen forager, so I'm aware of the wonderful bounty that is made available to us in terms of things you can pick from the hedgerows, but I'm also very aware that some things, just because they're natural, doesn't mean they're nice. There are some things that can harm you, so I wouldn't recommend picking every single mushroom that you find, etc. So just a note of caution about the word natural. And natural remedies as well, they sound wonderful, but just because they are natural doesn't automatically mean they're safe. I'm a very big proponent of helpful herbal interventions, but we need to be a little careful about the word natural. It doesn't always mean totally safe. I think we're running a little bit behind time. I was going to launch this question: what are your earliest memories, associations? We've kind of done that a little bit, so I'll skip ahead. There's been a very long association with health and the natural world, from ancient pre-medical traditions. Have always used nature in terms of what grows there, the natural world, the cycles of the moon, etc., have been part of healing practices for a very long time. And that's been taken forward in more recent times with spa culture, taking the waters from Roman times up until Victorian times. Taking the waters has been a very standard intervention. Constitutional walks, that kind of things. Sanatoriums, so they were places where people were taken out of the city environment to the fresh air, the appreciation of the mountains and the natural world being a very important part of that. And then there's the whole natural health movement with naturopathy, really harnessing the power of nature. And then going further back in time, but also forward in time, there's been a long tradition of vision quests, going into nature to seek wisdom, to seek support, spiritual and or physical, mental, emotional. And there's now a kind of rebirth of that movement as well. So that's a deeper kind of medicine, healing the person, the psyche, the soul, using medicine in that way. And then just to give you a bit of a background, more recently there has been medical research looking at the impact of being open, available, touched by nature seems to have very profound effects on the human organism. So, for example, in the 80s, both these studies came out showing that men in prison had far fewer need of medical services when they were allowed access to landscape, and even just looking at it out of their windows seemed to make a difference. And then a very famous kind of seminal study looking at post-op recovery of people who had a view of nature and those who didn't. And there seemed to be pretty much a whole days of improvement. People got better a day quicker than people who were shut up without the view. So that signals something quite important, that the body really behaves much better, it heals better when you're exposed to nature. This idea of biophilia, so a kind of longing to be with and recognize one's part in nature. That idea has really taken root to use a natural metaphor, in these recent times. And then there's been loads of research looking at how being in touch with nature benefits us. That could be reducing asthma levels and allergy if you are more exposed to nature, but it's also things like blood pressure, stress levels, general all-cause mortality seems to be lower if you have more access to nature. And there's also been the recognition that nature includes not only the green, but the blue as well. There's something equally soothing that we get from blue environments, so water. So that I've just highlighted a couple of kind of scientific papers that give me reason to kind of say the things I'm saying. So here's a kind of review of many, many studies all put together in one block, and they've shown very powerful data suggesting reduced incidence or reduced, all these things crop up much, much less when people have significant exposure to nature. So stress hormones, things to do with blood pressure, asthma, heart disease. They didn't mention cancer specifically, but we do know there are other, there's very good reason to think that support of the immune system is one of the most prominent benefits of being in touch with nature, which in itself is going to be helpful for cancer. Yeah, so I'm just kind of trying to back up my ideas with important professors of medicine from here, there, and everywhere. So you can see that I'm not the only one crying out for more medicine coming in the form of nature rather than in the form of pills. And then William Bird, who's a really wonderful a doctor who's looked into the role of a lot of physical activity and nature-based stuff, and has done some really remarkable work making that happen in communities. So these are the things that we know get affected by being in nature, as I think I've mentioned, and they're probably all very interlinked. Improved mental health probably leads to improved sleep, which in itself probably leads to improved immune function. And if you're getting sick less, you probably feel better, stress levels are down. You know, all of these things are very, very interconnected. So yeah, this is just to give you an idea of where the evidence lies and why we think how nature has these effects. One thing I haven't mentioned is that funny thing in the middle, exposure to fractals. Now that's a bit way out, and I haven't looked deeply enough into the science of that, but there does seem to be this response within the brain to natural patterns. So nature is very often repeating itself. So the way that leaves form on a stem, or the way that pine cones kind of form in that wonderfully regular repeated spiral pattern, or petals on a flower, that all of those are examples of fractals. Fractals occur in nature a lot, and they seem to have a very profound effect on the brain. When we look at fractals, they have a very soothing, calming effect. So don't worry if you're one of those people that perhaps isn't going to be getting out massively and doing huge amounts of exercise. Even just bearing witness to nature seems to be a powerful positive. So yeah, you get an idea of why nature might be helpful. And of course, vitamin D we get from the sun, although between October and April, it's quite hard to get decent amounts of vitamin D from the sun, so you might need to take a supplement. But certainly between April and October, you'll find, you know, if you're out for half an hour or so a day with 4 arms bared, you'll be getting really good levels of vitamin D, which we think is pretty helpful in terms of reducing recurrence in cancer. So that's the general model. You have a chronic stress response that leads to all those bad things, and nature does the reverse. You can see that if you were confronted with that stream of traffic in a grey, smoky, clogged up town centre, that might do things to your blood pressure in the wrong way. And I imagine that being in that park with tall trees, sun streaming down, green all around, it might do the reverse to the blood pressure. So I wondered if we could do a little exercise, if you could humor me, I'm going to ask you to choose a natural object. That could be in the garden outside, if that's available to you, or it could be on your windowsill, or it could be just a natural object that you have in the house anyway, something you picked up on a walk or beachcombed from the sea. It could be a photo of a natural object, or it could be a painting, just something that has a connection with nature. So I want you to find something that's maybe a little bit special, or not. It could just be a postcard that someone sent you that you haven't looked at in detail, but now is your opportunity. So choose a natural object that you can see. And when the time comes, don't run off now. Let me just explain what I want you to do. When you've got it in front of you, I want you to take a moment, maybe a few minutes actually, to really, really explore it, to look at it in detail, to feel it, to smell it, if that's relevant, to touch it, to notice it in every way possible, really. And maybe jot down some responses. What do you get from it? What does it say to you? What does it mean to you? Maybe there's a story attached to it. Someone gave it to you, or you found it on a special day, or you'll have some things will come. And the last stage, I think now the focus really is to try and notice what wisdom there is in nature. I often find, I know it sounds a little bit wacky, but I'm not completely mad. I'm just an enthusiast. So again, humor me, go with me on this little journey. Have a look at the object and see if it has some wisdom for you. What can you see in that object, or what can it tell you about wholeness, about health, about healing? You might be surprised. You may not have looked at it in that way before, but I think if you do look at it, there might be something. There might not, but be open to it and see if there's something there for you. So yeah, I'm going to give you a minute or two to just go through that process. So go and get something, or and then follow those instructions if you can. In fact, I'm going to go and do it as well. So we've all got about a minute to find something, a minute to jot stuff down, and then a minute to get the lesson about healing and wholeness. Okay? So I will see you back here in a couple of minutes. So, welcome back, people. I hope you have found an object or a photo or a something. We could, at this point, go into breakout rooms just to have a little sharing of how that was for you, what you found, what it brought you, what wisdom is there in nature. I wonder how easy that is, Catherine. Is that?
That's very easy. I can open some breakout rooms right now, and really just encouraging people. Sometimes it sounds a bit scary being put in a breakout room. The breakout rooms are 4 or 5 people. You really, everybody contributes as much or as little as they want, and you can keep your camera on or off, that's fine. If you find yourself in a breakout room with nobody else in there, then there's a little button at the bottom that says ask for help, but I'll be keeping an eye out and make sure that people are in a room that has at least a few people in there. So I'd encourage you, don't be shy. It's just an opportunity. You're not going to be asked to do any sort of deep personal sharing. It was really just to look, as Duncan says, kind of thinking about your response to nature. And so don't worry, it can sound a bit intense, but it really isn't. It's just an opportunity to have a short conversation with a few other people in a similar situation. So shall I open the rooms then?
That would be great.
So you'll be invited, and you need to just accept the invitation to join the room, and then I will take you. You'll automatically come back in how many minutes, Duncan?
Well, yeah, I was going to say. So if anyone who does want to say something, if they take kind of a minute or two. So let's say there'll be 3 people in a room. There might be 4. So we'll be kind of 6 or 8 minutes, something like that. So a minute or two each, depending on how long you feel you want. But yeah, probably not longer than a couple of minutes to talk about what you found, what it brought you, how the experience was. There's something green and natural and lovely you can bring into your home at any time. I wanted to focus now on actually thinking about how we might do things differently in the next days, weeks, months ahead, if we are kind of recognizing that nature is an important part of being well, feeling well. What else could we do to bring a little bit more of it into our lives? You may feel that you have enough, in which case you don't need to change anything. But I wonder if there is a bit of curiosity in you about what else could I add? What else could bring me joy or bring me peace? And I've just got a few ideas here. And what I'm going to be asking you to do is to be creating what I call a SMART plan, which is a very kind of specific plan, exactly when, exactly where, with whom, etc. A SMART plan of how to bring nature into your life over the next days, weeks, perhaps months. So, for example, it could be any of these things: going for a walk in your local park once a week with your friend and family. Notice how specific I've made it. We've got the place where it is. We've got how often it's happening with someone. Or it could be just bring nature into your home or where you work. But again, when we do a SMART plan, it should be very specific. It should be bring in a different plant each month, put it on my desk, and pay attention to it for 1 minute at the start of every day, or something like that. Making it very specific makes it easier to achieve and more likely to happen. Or it could be just thinking about the year, making sure nature is a bigger part of the year. Plan a weekend away or a week away, somewhere where you're going to get lots of nature exposure. Or it could be a regular activity, monthly or weekly, in a club or in an allotment or with a wildlife organization. There's any number of different ways that we can bring nature into our lives. It could be a hobby. It might be something you already do, or something you used to do more of, or something you've always thought of doing and not made the time or found the time. This is an invitation to see what nature is asking you to do. And it could be something completely different. It could be watercolors, doing a watercolor class, or it could be something some indoor gardening, or there's any number of things. But as I say, I want you to be very, very smart in the plans you're about to make. So I want you to get a piece of paper, or it could be on a laptop, or it could be in your brain if you can make a very specific thing and remember it. I think I would struggle. I would definitely jot it down on a piece of paper if you can. Make a plan about how you're going to bring nature into your life in the next days, weeks, months, and try and make it as specific as possible. So who, when, where, what, exactly what it looks like, what it smells like. Okay, so really, really specific image so you can picture it. Measurable, that makes it so once a week or 3 times a month or every day, so you can tick off whether you are or you aren't achieving it. It just gives it a little bit of accountability, and again, it makes it more likely to happen if you can count yes or no, tick that box, yes or no. Attainable, so make it realistic. Don't make it a huge mountain to climb. Make it something that you actually are likely to be able to do. Make it, small and achievable is better than massive but daunting. So maybe scale it down to make sure it's something achievable, attainable. Relevant, make sure that it is actually doing something that you want. It's bringing something that you want into your life. Something that means something to you, not something random. And time-based is just within the next month, I want to have been to this garden centre twice, or over the next 6 months, I want to be practicing this thing. Make sure it's got a kind of time frame around it. Okay. So I'm going to give you, there are various ways you might want to get nature into your life. It could be through your GP. Actually, they run, a lot of GPs are now linked up with social prescribing initiatives, and a lot of those are nature-based. So they're basically activities in nature. That could be walking, groups of various different levels. It could be therapeutic horticulture. It could be blue water sport, kind of water-related activities. So it could be via your GP or social prescribing group. Just there are some examples. And there are lots of other projects around. If you or if you Google what's going on in your local area, if you look in health and nature, you may well find a lot of opportunities out there. So just giving you ideas about where to look. And here are some ideas about how you might get nature into your life. This is available to anyone. Walking outside your door, looking in a hedgerow, or in your garden, or in a woodland, or even on the pavement. You can find nature doing its thing. Getting into your garden, using plants in the home, putting a green screensaver on your computer, etc., etc. Or even just going there in your imagination, thinking natural thoughts, imagining natural scenes, etc. Okay? For working people, I've thought, okay, well, people are busy. How would you get nature in? It could be the walk to work. It could be having meetings outside rather than indoors. At break times, what do you do? Do you sit at your desk or do you allow yourself out? Do you bring in those plants from home? Do you have a one day a week where you bring the dog or the cat or the goat or whatever it is you have? And then bringing nature into screensavers and on pictures on the wall, etc., etc., etc. And then if you're not going to work, if perhaps you or someone you know is a bit less able, there are still things you can do in the comfort of your own home. You know, indoor plants, raised beds, gentle walking groups, etc., etc. There are very often ways you can get nature into your life. So going back to the plan, the request is now to make your own smart plan. And it could be one of these things, or it could be something of your own making, okay? I want you to make a smart plan about how you are going to bring nature into your life in the next days, weeks, months. You decide the time frame, you decide what the thing is you want to do, and try and make it as specific, measurable, attainable, relevant as you can. So I, for one, I'm restarting my winter run swim regime, which is on a Monday morning at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, going for a kind of, well, a run of indeterminate length, and then a swim in a pond, very cold, and then a run back to try and get warmth back into my feet, with a bit of tree climbing. That's the thing we're adding this year. Last year we just did running and swimming, but we're going to add in tree climbing to the Monday morning thing. Brilliant. Yeah, I love the sound of what's going on here. I want to make lavender hearts for a local chemo gift bag charity. That's a lovely thing. So there's a lot involved in that. There's the craft of it. There's the smell of it, which, I mean, is one of the most soothing smells available to humankind. And there's the giving aspect of it. So I love what you've managed to include there. So in no particular order, I found various things, local resources. Here's a lovely organisation that has a Facebook page based down in Weston-super-Mare. But obviously, because a lot of it is online, it's available to anyone who wants to join. But they've recently launched a nature-based arts and craft course. So that sounds great. Excuse me. There we go. There's this wonderful organization. They're based in the US, but they have a lot of stuff online around the value of nature connection. And yes, that's worth cruising around. They've got some very good books, links to podcasts, etc. This is a local-ish organization, which I didn't know about. Catherine, do you know about YW? We Hear You. So they're based in...
Yes.
Okay.
I've heard of We Hear You. I didn't realise they were doing some outside stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So they're doing stuff coming up March, June, September. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. Oh, that's just reference to the fractals research I was showing you. I think that is it for now.